23 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, the second day of campaigns. Yes, 150 days.
We're going to count it?
Yes, we'll count it. I have 150 in total. Well, good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Kayla Magwa. Quite a lot of things to talk about. The FCT ministers in the news for several things. The Oshun elections, the flooding in the FCT. We'll get to all of that later because we have Laula Konde joining us today on the program. But we do need to talk about something quite important this morning, don't we?
Yes, indeed. The military pensioners who staged a protest here in the FCT. Of course, the main meal today will be about that scorecard. I know you want to hear something about it, but we're reserving it for the discussions that we're going to be having much later. But let's talk about military pensioners. Initially, when people had heard that the salaries of military personnel were going to be increased, I'm looking for by how many percentage now. We'll come to the percentage. But the fact that it was even going to be increased at all was something to cheer, because we do know that we really cannot compensate properly our military personnel. Because what do you compensate people who have who have volunteered their lives in service of the country, who say, look, this is my death certificate, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I'm willing to offer my life. You know, I'm willing to die for this country. That is what essentially military personnel and largely, security personnel across the length and breadth of this country have offered to do. How do you properly compensate people for that? Well, it's a big question, but the president, I'm sure, must have been thinking about it. The only thing right now is, whilst it is that there is some commendation for that, because it's not the only thing that is expected to be done. They say you also have to make sure that they have the equipment to fight so as to boost their morale, and a lot of other things that need to be done for serving personnel. Those who are now out of service are saying, look, you also need to pay us some attention, because what it is that we are taking home as pensioners is not anything to go by. Given the high cost of living, given the current situation, they believe that now that the salaries of serving military personnel have been reviewed, they too should also be entitled to a review of their pensions to at least make it worthwhile. Well, they were out on the street. It was a rather painful sight to watch, because ideally this ought not to be the situation. People should not finish serving their fatherland and have to go through this. They do not have to make a case. It ought to come automatically. We understand that the implementation of these new salaries will not come until September, but they are taking no chances, and they have said, look, we also are making a case. You have to pay us some attention. And it's interesting that the people who were attending to them were serving military personnel. Kayla, quite a picture to see there. They're telling them where to stay, the boundaries that they cannot cross, etc., etc. But I think the only heartwarming thing here is that at least they got some audience with the authorities that matter.
The Minister of Defense. Okay, so our pensioners. Let's start with serving men in the military. We have about 230,000 of them. 230,000 military personnel in this country. And then when it comes to the pensioners that we have in this country, it's been a sad story for many years. The increase, that percentage you were looking for, was between 30 to 80% increase in the salaries of serving military personnel. Now, what the pensioners are saying is that should reflect in our pensions as well. So we have two issues. The fact that, number one, many of our pensioners do not get their retirement benefits, which is a travesty and not a very good example for the people who are trying to keep us alive, for those who are awake while we are asleep. If they believe that they are not being taken care of, if they feel like after I finish working, I'm not going to get my retirement benefits, I have to come and protest in front of the Ministry of Finance, or protest until the Minister of Defense speaks to me, it's not a very encouraging sight for our troops. And one of the things that we have to continually do is encourage our troops, because we need them. We are in a war. Whether you want to accept that we're in a war or not, we are in a war. There's a lot of insecurity in Nigeria. And these military personnel are the ones who stand in the gap. They're the reason why you and I can go to bed. We went to bed yesterday. They had operations in Borno. They had operations in Adamawa, in Zamfara, in Kebbi. It's ongoing. It's 24 hours. So when we treat people who take care of us this way, we're not setting a good example. It's the reason why when we see terrorist activities in this country, from time to time, we hear about how military personnel are complicit in the insecurity. It's because they're thinking about their future. So when I finish working, when I finish risking my life, I grew up in the Air Force. So I have so many friends. There's a friend of mine who's in the Nigerian Army. He has 3 fingers. We make fun of his fingers all the time out there because his job, he's a bomb detonator. I went to school with him, and he decided to join the military, and he's a bomb detonator, and he lost 2 of his fingers while detonating a particular bomb. And the military was very kind. They took care of him. They made sure that they were able to. So he has prosthetics. But we make fun of him every time because he has his 3 fingers. These are people that are doing everything to keep us safe, everything to keep us alive. It would be a travesty if we keep treating them this. It already is. It's a travesty that we treat them this way. And the calling on the authorities. I heard that they got some assurances from the Minister of Defense yesterday. I'm calling on the presidency, Mr. President. These are the people, these are the people that help us sleep at night. See that villa that you're inside, they are the ones working. Them, the DSS, the police, all of these people, our military personnel need all the help that they can get. If they're asking for something that they're not asking for anything different, they're asking for what they deserve, then maybe this is something that should actually be done immediately, Margaret.
Indeed, Kayla, I want to believe that the assurances that was given to them by the Ministry of Defense, or shall I say the Minister of Defense, will not just be mere words. It will be things that will be acted upon, and we will see the results. So we do not have to see pictures like this again on our screens. But we will take a break because we all know the cost of living, because that's part of the reason why military personnel are out on the streets, and that's one of the reasons why, we've asked for. There has been that clamor for an increase in incomes. But yesterday we also got a briefing. Reform scorecard. What exactly is that about? What exactly are the figures saying? We understand we've saved about 15 trillion naira in subsidy savings. Where has all the money gone? We'll be speaking with a member of the private sector, of the corporate sector, in just a moment. So don't go away. You do not know if you have been benefiting from this. Don't say, I didn't get it. All I know is I've been spending. We'll hear that perspective when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
And plenty. Nigeria's
reform scorecard, the benefits, costs and harms prevented, is the focus of this news conference organized by the Federal Ministry of Finance. The Minister of Information and National Orientation sets the tone for the conference as he highlights the significance of fuel subsidy removal.
The decision to remove the fuel subsidy was undoubtedly one of the most significant and difficult economic reforms undertaken by this administration. We recognize that it has required sacrifices and adjustments from individuals, families, businesses, and communities across Nigeria.
Relying on statistics, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy presents the scorecard, applauding the removal of fuel subsidy, which he believes has increased savings for the country.
The removal of a fuel subsidy that was quietly bankrupting the country, and the unification of an exchange rate system that had become a source of arbitrage, distortion, and corruption rather than stability. Those decisions came at a real cost, and we're not here to pretend otherwise.
He highlights the benefits of the reforms to Nigerians, describing the criticisms as unfair.
Between June 2023 and December 2025, Subsidy savings mobilized the sum of 15.8 trillion naira in resources for the Federation. Many people will say, where is the subsidy saving? As a matter of fact, there wasn't any alert to the Federation account with the description subsidy savings. So the subsidy savings showed up in form of higher collection by customs, because for every 1 naira or $1 of import duty before, at 460 naira, it became $1 at 1,004, 1,003, 1,005.
He also highlights the harms prevented by the reforms.
When 27 states that were defaulting in paying salaries and pension no longer default, today that number is 0. Number of states defaulting. They're paying Nigerians. They're not paying Americans or Europeans or foreigners. They're not paying the rich people. They're paying the average Nigerian who can now put food on the table.
The federal government believes the reform is already transforming the lives of Nigerians, as the government promises to work towards sustaining the gains recorded so far.
We have Dangote, Bua Group, First Bank, Otodola, and all the Adenuga Junior, Globalcom, determining what happens to growth at the macro level. Then the ordinary man in Akwa Ibom, or in Aba, or in Kaduna, will not feel it. So the reforms are good. It helps the macro level to do well. But we have not taken into account what happens at the lower level. The growth is not inclusive. It is not inclusive. While we agree that the reforms have helped to address the macro fundamentals, it does not trickle down. And secondly, it is controlled by only a few in the economy. So definitely the reforms actually were not well articulated. They were done in a hurry. They didn't take into account the macro implications, and that is why there is suffering going on. At face value, yes, but it does not address the needs of the man at the bottom, at the grassroots. That basically is the reason why. So no matter what we talk about the macro indicators, it does not mean the economy is doing well.
Well, that was an immediate critic by Professor Nkwocha of the University of Lagos on the government's presentation of the scorecard. Right here in our studios, we have Mr. Adewale Smart Oyeride, who is the Director General of Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I do not know, were you present at the presentation of the scorecard?
No, I wasn't, but I followed conversation.
You followed the conversation. Yeah. Do you agree with Professor Nkwocha when he says that this has only been at the macro level, benefiting perhaps employers and big companies, but not trickling down to the small people?
Well, I think the reality for us is this, and for me, it's probably this transparency in the context of the presentation. While some areas were labeled green, improving, and instructively there were areas where the minister mentioned there were structural improvements. And I also remember in many conversations, I think the president also have alluded to the fact that, look, we've experienced some level of stability at the top level, and it's now for those benefits to start trickling down to the shop floor. So absolutely, we've had stability at the structural level, or we're experiencing some stability at the structural level. And you need to have that stability at the structural level before things start trickling down to the shop floor, as I'll call it, to the average. There's no common man again, but to the average Nigerian. As
yeah, why is it there's no common man again?
The word common is too common now.
Well, 15.8 trillion, that is how much the minister says we have saved between June 2023 and December 2025. Are these figures that you align with, especially coming from the private sector?
You know, there is, from the reason of the job we do, where data research is what rules your conversation. Then it becomes difficult when the minister, especially coming from his antecedents. You know, he's not the traditional politician that we know. And from my experience and engagement with him, while he was PwC, while he was chairman of the presidential committee, and now we believe strongly that he's not frivolous. And for him, he has quite a lot at stake. So significantly, we believe the context of what he has presented, and the calmness at which he presented it also, I think he is in a position to defend him, to defend those figures. So there's no reason for us to doubt a figure that has been published in the public place, with opportunities for stakeholders to fact check it.
Has any of these figures or any of these savings, has it accrued in any way to the private sector, or would you say that the private sector has been left holding the short end of the stick?
Well, at the initial stage, when the president came up, there is about 20 billion intervention fund for the private sector. There's another fund for SMEs, support for SMEs, and support for MSMEs, which for manufacturers especially, which the president magnanimously gave at that point. So the private sector has enjoyed a bit of support within the context of this figure, but there are no grants. There are loans in the short-term, single-digit loans. But beyond the loans, beyond the figures, you know, there are also issues that we think are to be addressed that we are currently escalating to the right authorities so that they can deal with those issues, especially for the private sector. Because in the context of this presentation, money was saved, expenditures were made, and there was no specifics. You know, even when infrastructure, we say infrastructure development has consequences for the private sector, because building infrastructures, the private sector will benefit indirectly from those infrastructures. But there are also inherent issues that I said that we are escalating, that we think the minister need to deal with quickly, so that they don't frustrate the outcome, the expected outcome of these reforms.
Do you want to expatiate on some of those issues?
Now, currently, you know, and quite unfortunately, we have over 130 bills at the National Assembly. And those bills, many of them have private sector will contribute 0.01% to something, the private sector will contribute 0.5% to something, the private sector will contribute 1% to fund something. Now, if you aggregate the whole of those 0.1%, 0.5%, aggregate all those, they eat back into the profit before tax or profit after tax of those companies. And these figures, this was 0. They are not taxes. They are not the traditional taxes. And we feel those are direct contradictions to the outcome, the expected outcome of the reform tax itself. Basically, one of them is reduce the proliferation of taxes, levies, and fees across the board. Now we are still trying to implement the Tax Act itself. We are in the process of implementing with the issues that are coming up. And now we have over 130 bills still waiting as past maybe the first, second, or third reading at the Senate or the National Assembly. Those are contradictions. Those are inherent issues that can frustrate the outcome of this of the reforms. And we also have agencies, some agencies of government, because of the act that enables them. They also come in with increasing levies, increasing fees, increasing charges, which we also feel is against the overall objective of this administration's plan to stabilize the private sector and also to grow this economy.
You know, you were saying something about not having specific, but I want to be able to break down exactly what it is that the finance minister said yesterday. So he said the federal government received 5.4 trillion. Well, of course, we're talking about that 15.8 trillion that was saved from from the removal of fuel subsidy. So he said the federal government received 5.4 trillion of that amount, while 10.4 trillion was shared between the states and local governments. So let's have that down. And then he said the federal government generated 3.1 trillion in incremental independent revenue, mainly through remittances from government-owned entities. Then he now goes further. Then he now said the federal government's incremental resources over the period, subsidy savings, independent revenue, and incremental borrowing, 20.4 trillion naira. And then he now says the additional borrowing of 11.9 trillion would have been significantly higher. You remember, this government has been criticized for constantly borrowing. So he said the 11.9 trillion would have been higher without the fiscal space that was created by the president's reforms. And then he says they recorded 30.64 trillion in incremental expenditure during that same period.
Yeah.
And but he now starts to talk about what it is that we're facing when it comes to repaying our debts. Now he says if we were paying 1 million before, if we were paying 1 million, well, of that amount, he said wage adjustments 9.39 trillion,
Yep.
Minimum wage increases and allowances for public servants, while 9.37 trillion was towards external debt servicing. Now he's saying if we were paying $1 million before in interest for our foreign debt, it is still the same 1 million, but instead of 460 naira, it's now 1,415 naira. So the issue is when the minister gives us all of this, and he may be correct because we know just the time with he knows his figures.
Yep.
Now the issue is when we say there's going to be a reform, I even wrote it down here, a reform scorecard. Maybe you can speak to the reason why this administration feels it necessary to do a reform scorecard, and if the reform scorecard actually translates into a better life for the Nigerian people from the standpoint of a manufacturer.
First, let me speak to the issue of the increasing quantum of amount you are using to pay for debt.
Yes.
And I'm glad that was mentioned because it's a double-edged sword also for the private sector. So for businesses that have borrowed, that running on credit, when dollar was 400 and something naira, now they have to face the risk or the jeopardy of paying the same, probably double or triple what they borrowed.
From 460 naira to 1,415 naira.
So it's the same thing for the private sector. So it's the same jeopardy that the private sector faces. And while the government can print money, you can do ways and means. The private sector doesn't have the luxury of overborrowing because it comes back to the business. So I just want to note that. Now the issue of whether the scorecard is necessary. I've been in forums where people ask, we remove subsidy. Then what have we used the fund for subsidy?
Because when he says the money was shared, 10.4. He said 10.4 trillion was shared among states and local governments. Of that 15 billion, 15.8 is not billion, it's trillion. 15.8 trillion that Mark was talking about. 10.4 was shared among states and local governments. How has that translated into the pockets of Nigerians?
Now the one we should look at, and the area we focus on is, now subsidy was removed. A large amount was supposedly saved. Now the question then was, okay, where exactly has the money gone? Many view the federal government as the all in all, conscripting this money, using it for his own use. Now he has basically explained, look, this is how we made the money. This is where the money has gone. Now he's now giving citizens the opportunity to say, look, the states have collected this much. I read yesterday that it was for July, the state actually shared the largest chunk of amount, about 3 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, that was shared. The biggest in the context of amount that was shared to all the states. Now it has given all of us the opportunity to, one, check what the minister have said. If the states have not received, if they have not received as much as they said they've received, then let the state come out and say we have not received as much. Now, if the states have received as much, it's now left for citizens to start interrogating the state governments, interrogating the local government or authorities to say, look, you have received this much. What exactly have you done with it? If our propensity to borrow is increasing, because the more the propensity to borrow, then the likelihood of your interest also increasing. Now, as for us to interrogate ourselves, is it correct or is it sustainable for us to continue to borrow? And then the expenditure aids that he has given. Now for Nigerians to start interrogating those expenditure aids, now, are these the priorities for us now? And all of us make our recommendation to the government. But the transparency of the presentation, the clarity that it provides, I have the slides, and it gives you something to think through, something to interrogate. And then if you want to make your policy recommendation to government, and you're in a better position to make those policy recommendations.
I want to keep repeating it, Malba. 15.8 trillion was saved in fuel subsidy, and the government says 10.4 trillion of the 15.8 trillion was sent to states and local governments. So the question now becomes, what have the states and local governments done with the 10.4 trillion naira that was given to them from the removal of fuel subsidy, the money saved by the removal of fuel subsidy?
That's a big question.
So do you think that pressure is now on the state governments to show, I mean, their own commissioners of finance also have a duty to now also hold their own scorecards and say, oh, this is what we have done?
Absolutely. I think it should trickle down. You know, the commissioners of finance in states, you come out and also say, this is how much we've received, this is how much we have spent. You know, we believe strongly that as private businesses, at the end of the year, you audit your account, you present your scorecard to your shareholders to gauge what we have done. The Minister of Finance has bailed the cat now, and the state also should follow. And so this is how much we have received. These are the constraints we face, and this is how we have expended this amount. I think we should move progressively towards transparency in government, and which the Minister of Finance has, I think, has set the pace now.
And I think the President has always alluded to that. Every time he has the opportunity to, speak to it, he will always say, but states are getting so much money now. What are they doing with the money? Are they building? They should stop building flyovers where it is not needed and focus on the quality of life of the average Nigerian.
I think we should commend the President for one thing. You know, it takes some level of boldness, and he has demonstrated that to allow your Minister of Finance to come and share this kind of information. I'm not sure we've had it like this before. You know, allowing the Minister of Finance to walk and come and share what he has done, and come and defend how the government have spent the money. Now they have shared it, which is a good step.
No, but we used to have this. Don't forget that under former Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, there used to be a publishing of what the share of the federal government was and what states were getting every month in the newspapers, in the dailies. That was something that was done every month, so that we could also hold state governments accountable.
But the kind of the level, the notch that the minister has taken it to now, this kind of details, also sharing details concerning how much is spent or has been spent on wages. You know, it puts all of us in the clear for all of us to defend what we have received. So I can't go tomorrow to the media and say, look, this is what is happening, because I have received some level of clarity for me to interrogate. I also put citizens, and I must say this, citizens are also in a good position now to engage constructively, engage the state government constructively, and also engage the local government constructively, because that is where development should actually start.
It's a good thing that this is coming at the start of campaigns. And don't forget, a few days ago, we had a signing of a peace accord to hold political parties to issues-based campaign, to stay on the issues. And the issue right now is we still know that a lot of Nigerians are facing a cost of living crisis.
Absolutely.
We know that everything, for a number of people, even when incomes went up, I think only recently we had Labour, making noise and saying, look, this 70,000 naira which we agreed upon is not sufficient.
It has lost value.
It has lost value because we keep seeing inflation figures going up. The cost of food has gone up. The cost of not just fuel, electricity has also gone up. And these things are happening. And so at the end of the day, and I think it's a good thing that Mr. Idele kept on saying, I think also the Minister for Information says, we will not pretend that this has not come at a huge cost. The question is, what now needs to be done to bridge, to make these gains also available to ordinary citizens, that they too can begin to feel the impact? We knew that it was going to be painful at first, but at some point we must begin to feel some relief. Some relief must come to ordinary citizens. How would you suggest that needs to come?
It's a complex situation we find ourselves, and one of the beautiful things is that we are dealing with the structural issues now from where we are coming from. And as we have said many times, it's really not rocket science. Now, the simple definition of inflation is progressive increase in the cost of goods, as it were. Then why are we having increases in the cost of goods and services? It's likely one of the key elements should be the cost of inputs, the cost of doing business itself, the cost of borrowing for manufacturers, creating an hospitable environment for businesses to produce. ramping up or making infrastructures, power, making it available. Because in the last 1 year, manufacturers have spent close to 1 trillion naira on alternative energy. And those alternative energy, they feed back into the cost of doing business. So I think what we can focus on now is deliberately focus on the issues that can drive the cost of doing business down, the cost of inputs. As I said, deal with the issue of interest rate, deal with the regulatory challenges that we currently have, deal with the issue of, I mentioned 130 bills, that are currently in the National Assembly. Each of those elements, each of those 0.1%, 0.2%, they don't disappear. It goes back to the cost of doing business. And once it goes back to the cost of doing business, the average Nigerians will meet them on the shelf. In the goods you buy, in the services you request, you meet those costs, you meet them on the shelf. So we need to look at the whole context of how do we reduce the pressure on the average Nigerians. And lastly for me is the wage goods. We call them wage goods. If you deal with the issue of transportation, all of us, the average Nigerians, the common Nigerians, we all deal with transportation. Deal with the issue of transportation. Deal with the issue of housing and address the issue of foods. Those are critical basic issues that an average Nigerian, all Nigerians basically, and education also. Let's deal with the public schools, because the amount that an average civil servant spends on private school, it puts pressure not only on the man, it puts pressure on the whole family.
I mean, I don't know what the future means. After listening, I don't know what that. After listening to everything Mr. Oyedele said yesterday, I don't. What's the plan? What's the plan? Because it's not a very good report. It's not one that's very encouraging, because he says the more naira we incur. When you have debt service to pay, you don't negotiate, you don't delay. He says you pay, because delay or default are consequences. So we still have to continue paying that money. And then he now says that expenditure on higher wages exceeded the federal government's entire share of the savings from subsidy removal. That's a problem. Then he now says the incremental amount that the federal government spends paying higher wages is more than the entire savings that the federal government earned from subsidy removal. According to him, the reforms were not primarily introduced to increase government revenue, but to tackle what he says is entrenched corruption in Nigeria's fuel subsidy and foreign exchange markets. So it's not a report that says things are good.
Are getting better.
That's what this report is saying.
Two ways to start.
What do they? And Malcolm mentioned the fact that the campaigns are starting. And then well, it's not so very good. What next? How do we turn this around? Or was this report supposed to make us say, let us take our state governments and start holding them accountable? What's the future for us based on this?
Two recommendations from us with this. First, I don't envy the Honorable Minister of Finance. I really don't envy him. But two things we can do from this, and part of our recommendation is this. Now, we seem to be getting it right at the structural level. There have been some gains that he also mentioned. Those gains that we have currently, I think we should ensure that there's no reason for those gains to be eroded. Now, the tax reforms, the implementation have started, and the NRS also have alluded to the fact that they've made quite an improvement within the context of collections. Now, get as many people as possible that are basically out of the tax net before. If you get as many people, those that are not paying tax currently, get them, the big men as he called them some time ago, that are not paying tax, get them into the tax net. Then your propensity to increase your revenue within the context of those that are paying tax will help you to bridge some of those shortfalls. And then you mentioned a very critical issue, the issue of the wages, and before the end of the year or early next year, we are going back to the trenches in the conversation about the new minimum wage. So the challenges will not disappear, and those that we have voted, I think it's now for them to demonstrate the competence to navigate us, continuously navigate us out of the trenches. Now we are out of the trenches a bit. Because from what he said, where we are coming from, because one of the slides actually showed the baseline, the current position. If there's no reforms, where we will have found ourselves? We have found ourselves in a very big.
We would have been paying higher.
I'm not sure we'll be comfortably sitting here if from his submission, if the reform have not started. So let's tighten up the gains of the reforms And those gaps that we have identified, then we just we keep eating those shortfalls so that we can actually come out of this this very difficult position.
One of the things I really, one has to admire about how this report was presented is that it's not a bulky book, which is something I would normally see with the Ministry of Finance. Yeah, it's not a bulky book with an executive summary. The presentation was done in slides. It was very practical. What we've saved, where the money is at, and it's something I would encourage all Nigerians to. I mean, as long as you're literate and can read, it will be something worthwhile for you to get your hands on. So, for instance, it talks about the harms that the reforms prevented.
Yeah.
It talks about how the reforms benefit the average Nigerian. It talks about wage increases and timely payment of salaries and pensions, settlement of pension arrears and gratuities owed to retirees. It also talks about what would have been had it been we did not go down the path of this reform. So very practical, done in a slide fashion that you can easily see where we're spending the largest amount of money on wages and pensions and wage awards seem to have the largest sum of money. So it will be very instructive. It will be very helpful for commissioners of finance to borrow a template from here and also tell us what it is that they have done with the monies that they have received in their states. But you have now also, you're reeling out what now needs to be done for us to be able to move forward. Federal government too is also saying that the looking ahead, in their part of looking ahead, they have said they will stay the course of reform. There will be no reversal. Yep. They will accelerate translation of macro gains into meaningful impact for every household. Let me ask you, how do you think this can actually happen? Because this is where we really want this to happen.
Well, it's quite key. Accelerating the translation of the macro gains to household. And as I said, deal with the issue of the cost of doing business. Once you deal with it, it reflects
on the shelf.
Everything being equal, because we've also seen the issue of these CNG buses. It will shock you that even CNG owners that received grants, subventions from government to import CNG buses, tariff waivers to import CNG buses, they are also charging, from what the report we've gotten, they are also charging the same price that the regular fuels.
Yeah.
So, and that comes back to the part that when the minister said, moving forward, that look, Nigerians should play our part because we can't continue to sabotage the system and expect it to grow. So, for government, beyond giving tariff waivers, I think there also should be some element of monitoring. If you have given you waivers and you have imported without the correct excise, then the prices that you charge should reflect the support that the government has given. If you don't do that, then you have just opened the market to the market forces. And another average individual will look for who exactly to deal with. So those are the patches that we need to deal with. Once we deal with the issue of transportation, with the issue of CNG buses, Nigerians will feel it a bit because it's a cost that goes out of your purse every day.
Yeah.
You deal with the issue of food. Thank God we have some level of sanity now within the context of insecurity. Let's deal with the issue of insecurity and let food also be out of the problems that an average individual is dealing with. And then rightly the issue of public schools and then the issue of housing. You can't take that out. If you deal with all those, then the conversation will not be much about how much is the minimum wage. Because progressively, the cost of living will have progressively gone down and the pressure that an average Nigerian is facing will be less. And as the pressure is going down, you are invariably also solving the issue of insecurity indirectly. So it's a multiplier effect once we get it right. But we'll definitely make our recommendation to the appropriate authorities on how we think these processes can be accelerated quickly.
This certainly provides a basis for engagement.
Absolutely.
We have to thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Adewale Smart Oyemide is the Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. Thank you once more for speaking with us.
Thank you for having us.
We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at a number of things that have happened during the week. Laolu Akonde will be in the studio. In just a moment, please stay with us. Mr. Laulu Akonde joins us now, and quite a lot to ponder on. The Australian elections happened whilst, well, in the time that we had the last conversation till now, and I'm sure you must have been following keenly the fallout from the Australian elections. Any surprises, though?
Well, I mean, as to the outcome of the election itself, you know, I didn't see any serious surprises. I think it was very clear even before the election that Governor Ademola Adeleke is very popular with the people. You know, people find him relatable. You know, I think the magic of the dance is for real, because most of the time you have governors and ministers and who people don't feel connected to. If for anything, that is dancing and his happy, jolly mood has connected him to the people. And, you know, there are quite a lot of things that he has done, you know, that people can also see.
They only dance during campaigns, but he kept the dancing throughout.
Yeah. I think the dancing is his middle name, you know, and it's very good, you know, because, look, the most important thing in politics is that you can resonate with people, you know, and I think he does that very well.
Those that could not dance were jealous of him.
Well, we did see afterwards the fallout from, you know, from the elections. Just yesterday, we understand he went to collect his certificate of return, and some violence broke out. We had a conversation with a security expert during the week, and he was saying that, you know, Osun will still be monitored for at least another 2 years or thereabouts, you know, for the post-election fallout of it, because he still believes that the propensity to violence is still very much there as a result of the stage that was set before the elections. I do not know if it's an assessment that you agree with, but we saw that there was some attack on the governor's convoy. How much longer do you think we need to keep attention on Osun, given some of the comments that we have now heard? We heard the minister of the FCT saying that, you know, if we could have taken it, if I were there, we would.
If I don't want that,
So then you also hear Mr. Fayose, you know, countering and saying, look, the people of Osun had their minds made up, and you know, it was just best to let them have their. But those kinds of comments, you know, it really does raise concerns about what exactly could happen in 2027, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it was Professor Chidi Odinkalu that was responding to what Minister Nyesom Wike has said, that if the federal government wanted to take it, if the president wanted to take it, he would have been there, and essentially to interpret what he was saying, you know, and he has the duty to tell us that is not what he meant, that he would have stolen the election. You know, and Odinkalu said that, why don't we just give these guys what they want? Banditocracy. You know, Wike and Fayose, they need to be schooled about what it means to have a democratic government. Look, so if it were to be a general or a dictator or some warlord that is speaking, what would they be saying differently from how Wike and Fayose are speaking? We are in a democracy. Should we aspire in a democracy for a situation where the federal government overrides the wishes of the people? What is the public use of such very, you know, uninspiring commentary to say that the federal government could have taken it if they wanted to? What does that do?
Maybe he means that if he was there, he would have been able to change the minds of the people. Not steal the votes, but change the mind of the people in that time.
Come on. You know, first of all, it's not even from that state. Which also goes to what President Goodluck Jonathan said over the weekend, that, look, this idea of having governors of the ruling party go and invade a state during the off-cycle election is wrong. And to his credit, he said that when it happened when he was president, he ordered those governors to leave. This idea of trying to impose upon the people is undemocratic, and showing all of us that it's about the might of the federal government. It is, I mean, do you imagine what the generals who were holding this country sway up until 1999, do you imagine what kind of fun they will be having if this is how our politicians, who are supposed to be elected by the people, if this is the rhetoric That we could have taken it if we wanted to. I mean, with due respect, please, let's ask these people, if you don't have anything better to say to inspire generation of Nigerians, can you just face the job that you are given, Mr. Wiki? And Mr. Fayoshe,
No,
why don't you go and get the job?
Just to say that the Fayoshe now is Isaac Fayoshe, not...
No, it's Peter Fayoshe. That's it.
From what I read here, it says... anyways.
On TVC.
Yes. Well, I think his brother also responded to that particular comment. That's Isaac Fayoshe, who says that his stomach rumbles. Look at the confidence with which he said if the president had wanted Osun, he would have been there. May God continue to save Nigeria from these kinds of people. So those are, it will seem some sort of balancing comment. But I think it now dovetails into this peace accord that was signed on Tuesday. First, we did not see all of the political actors there. Some people have tried to justify, why should we show up if the president did not show up? And some say, oh, well, the president sent a strong delegation, but it goes down to what sort of campaigns can we expect? I was just telling Kayla, it's day 2 or is it day 3 now?
She just got all the way to 150.
That's a long one.
We can have an issues-based campaign, given the sort of rhetoric we're already hearing in the aftermath of Osun.
And to add to that, because we are running out of time, I have issues with the peace accord, as do a lot of Nigerians, because the issue of accountability doesn't even exist. You get people. So it's now a situation where, are we looking at just some kind of ceremony that we do that doesn't have any bearing on the people who are signing this? There's no accountability involved. Why are we doing this if there's no way to rein in people when their followers or themselves behave badly? What's the point?
I mean, look, because I've been inside, they don't take this peace accord seriously. Don't.
Why are we doing it?
So it's just a joke, and I think Shuwe was right. That is just a ritual. It's just a ritual. Nobody takes it serious. Let me tell you the things they don't take serious, and we all know. You will never see a presidential debate because they don't take it serious. I mean, Obasanjo started it in 1999 when he failed to attend the debate with Father Ibu. After he had agreed, he sat in his hotel in transport. Didn't come down.
Yes, I remember.
And since then, I don't think I think maybe Jonathan tried attending once or something, as sitting president. So all of these rituals, they are just rituals. Even in real life, rituals are supposed to mean something. But they don't take this thing serious. That is why they will say that the president sent a high power. The president had a responsibility
to be there,
to lead us, to say that these things are serious. This is about signaling. When the president says that, look, I am in office and I'm going to come out and make this commitment, that sends a democratic signal. So Atiku will say that, hey, it's not there, why do I have to go? It has been reduced.
Even the national chairman of the ADC, they sent a representative of the national chairman of the ADC, which means that it's beginning to whittle.
These people don't take Nigerians seriously, and I'm going to say this with my full chest. Most of our politicians, they do not take the people seriously. They don't. Please, let's stop pretending as if they do. They don't. They don't take people seriously.
But we should take ourselves seriously.
We should.
And if we do, what do you think we can do to impress it upon them to take us seriously?
Yes. Thank you. Those are the things that, in my own view, should be legislated. We should legislate presidential debates. We should compare them to come and do debate. We should compare them to sign the accord. That's the only language these folks understand. If you leave it within their discretion, let me assure you, having been inside and outside, they will never take it serious. You will not see them acting seriously until the only thing is that now you depend on the politicians to even make that happen. So we have to mount pressure on those who are in charge of lawmaking, that these are the things that has to be legislated, especially in the presidential debate. We're not going to have any presidential debate. You're not going to have, you're not going to see Atiku spar with Tinubu in a debate. Shouldn't we? So all these things, we're just doing rituals for ritual's sake, good symbolism, but what use when Tinubu is not there, Atiku is not there? Left only people like Showore and Obi, and the rest of them as if, they're just trying to, what does it mean? they don't take the people seriously. Come that day when they will take the people seriously.
You know, I was just going to say that maybe we shouldn't well, this was really not good. I mean, it certainly did not help the optics. We also understand that there are two opportunities for them to sign. The first one just happened on Tuesday. At the end of the campaign season, just before they go into the elections, there will be another signature. Maybe. Sure of that.
So that means that there's use for this advocacy.
Yes.
That Mr. President and the other guys show us that you take us seriously. Show us that you take us seriously. Just give us that impression. Which, by the way, you know, I'd like to make this point, goes back to all the argument about what is happening with the subsidy removal and the impact of the governance. Nigerians don't mind the fact that things are tough. Nigerians are not really interested in the details of the financing. They want a government that is sensitive to their suffering. They want leaders that can show us that while Nigerians are tightening their own bed, you guys are not loosening yours. That is what is missing. That is what is missing. You know, I mean, people like Oyedele, very brilliant, and they will explain the issues very well. But what Oyedele cannot do, that the president ought to lead to show us, is that they are sensible, they are sensitive, that they too are with Nigerians in the struggle. It is useless to have my very good friend, the chairman of FRS, say that, the Nigerian president, he can't drive an Escalade. I'm sorry. He cannot, he shouldn't be doing it. He can afford it, the federal government can afford it, but this is not the right time to show affluence, to show opulence. No! We have over 130 million of our people, and we don't have to wait. We need to show them that while we are working at the top options for which they are suffering, we too, we are sensible. That is what is missing. And it's not just in this government. That is what has always been missing among our leaders. No empathy for the people.
A word, they say, is enough for the wise. Mr. Nat'l Akonde, it's an ongoing conversation. 150 days to continue to discuss this. We have to thank you for coming. Yes,
thank
indeed.
You so much.
Mr. Nat'l Akonde is the presenter of Channels Television's Inside Sources and also a former presidential aide. That's where we draw the curtains this beautiful Thursday morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Maokwe Okun Yusuf.
I took a new word away from Laolu today. Escalade. We have Business Morning. Business Morning at the top of the hour. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you soon.